These are my early predictions for UFC 320, which will take place on October 4th at the Las Vegas. I'm so sorry, the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. My apologies. Anyway, without further ado, let me give my prediction on the first fight, the featured fight that's scheduled: Jiri versus Khalil Rountree. All right, so I think quite a few people will probably say the same thing as they do in every single Yuri fight. He doesn't cover his face. He's easy to hit. Blah blah blah. It doesn't matter, dude. Shit, logic doesn't matter in a Yuri Prochazka fight. Game plan doesn't matter. All that fucking matters is entertainment and the power of autism, and what I think is gonna come through. I think that's gonna prevail against Khalil Rountree. All right. Now there are other reasons, obviously. So Khalil Rountree, let's go over his last two wins and his last three fights. He obviously lost to Alex, but before that, he got a undeserved title shot because of a win against Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith, who was, even if he was in his prime, it wouldn't have been that impressive. Anthony Smith was completely washed in that fight. Not to mention very low fight IQ as it got worse and worse as he was aging, as he got closer to retirement. Anthony Smith's fight IQ fell to pieces. In addition to that, he lost. I'm so sorry. We're going over his wins. He beat Jamal Hill. Now, that was his most previous win against Jamal Hill. Beating Jamal, listen, yeah, he's a former champion. He's probably one of the worst skilled UFC champions of all time. But still, a win against a former champion is a win against a former champion, I guess. I can't really say shit, considering I'm about to glaze and hype up Jiri for beating the exact same guy and knocking him out. But speaking of knockout, Khalil Rountree had many opportunities to finish the fight against Jamal Hill. He beaten the legs of Jamal Hill to death. Jamal Hill was getting visibly slower also because of his cardio. His big belly just catches up to him near the end of the fight. Now that, with the addition of his beaten up legs that was caused by the damage, of Khalil's leg kicks, he had many opportunities to finish the fight in round 4 and 5. He didn't do it. With that being said, unlike Jamal Hill and Anthony Smith, Jiri Prochazka's fast. He's powerful. He's accurate. Now, those guys, they might have a little bit of those attributes, but no one is as accurate and fast as Jiri, I think. Next to Alex, like in that division, and maybe Ank. Yeah, I guess Ank is pretty quick, but, the way he took out Rakic, man, Jiri Prochazka's fast as fuck. And I don't know, obviously we can't just go by every year. If we don't know if he makes improvements, sometimes he's a completely different fighter in the next fight. But from what we saw against Jamal Hill, it seems that Jiri Prochazka has improved his defensive head movement. Now you put that in, and I see right here he has a reach advantage. This could be a problem for Khalil Rountree, a big problem, considering that the competition he's faced before, obviously there was Alex, but Alex, although he's beaten Jiri twice, he's much more composed and is much more careful with the shots. Jiri Prochazka, it's chaos straight off the bat. He's going for the finish as soon as the fight starts. So, yeah, I think that Jiri Prochazka is just gonna beat Khalil Rountree. I'm a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, I'm tired, fucking sick and annoyed of fucking Khalil Rountree. Constantly hearing about this guy reminisce about getting the shit beaten out of him by Alex, as if that's, God, you would think it was his wedding day the way he talks about it and describes it. It's like that meme, the SpongeBob meme where they're or it's Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob by the campfire talking about stories of the past. That's literally Khalil Rountree talking about getting beat up by Alex. That is Khalil reminiscing about his loss to Alex Pereira. It's so pathetic that he brags about it just because he was closer to beating him, just because he survived a couple more rounds than Jiri and Jamal. It's so embarrassing. Anyway, yeah, I hope Khalil gets finished in this fight. All right, next, Merab versus Cory Sandhagen. Now, yeah, I'm picking the favorite. I'm picking the obvious. Yes, I think Merab is going to smoke Cory Sandhagen. Merab by whatever he wants, quite frankly. Merab was able to keep up with the pressure of Umar Nurmagomedov in the early rounds, and even though Umar was so dangerous in later rounds, Merab just, known for his pressure, just keeping up with another great pressure fighter like Umar Nurmagomedov. It's going to be a problem for Cory. And, in Cory's fight with Umar was having a lot of success whenever Cory threw low leg kicks, threw a body kick, or even threw some flying knee. Umar was so good at catching it and getting him to the ground and just ragdolling him there. And Merab is kind of known to do the same thing. He mixes it up with when he's throwing that right hand, and you don't know if that right hand is going to be a takedown or he's doing both at the same time, or he's throwing the right hand and feinting with the takedown. Merab is going to be really tricky for Cory. Merab's style is literally one of the worst kind that Cory can put up with, which is that kind of high pressure, mixing up the volume of wrestling a lot with good overhands and decent striking. And unlike Figgy, who was Cory Sandhagen's his last win was against Figgy, Merab's not going to be backing up a lot. There was a lot of backing up by Figgy. That fight didn't last very long, but for most of it, Figgy was backing up. Merab's putting the pressure on you early. He's the machine, dude. He's going to get in your face early, all right? Sorry for that whining. That's my German Shepherd over there. But yes, Cory, I just seen him get grapple fucked way too many times to trust him against someone like Merab, who's just so good at mixing it and, unorthodox. He's the perfect problem for Cory. And much faster than Figgy. Much faster than Figgy, and, very similar kind of pressure to Umar, which Cory struggled against. So that's why I'm going with him. Let's get to the main event. All right. Ank versus Alex. So, yes, you saw the thumbnail. You saw the title. Is it the end of Shama? I think so. So, upon rewatching their first fight, the first couple rounds, the first round was Alex's most successful with the low leg kicks. But even in that round, Ank was returning his own, and he was chewing up the leg of Alex too. And in rounds 2, Ank was putting on the low leg kicks more, and it was, round 2 where Ank pretty much took over the fight and never looked back. He started to land, he was just landing in the pocket. He gets up very close. Every time that Alex had a good moment, in round 2, he landed kind of a decent head kick that kind of got Ank. Ank immediately returned with a counter left hand right after the head kick in that round. And, that was round 2. So by the end of that round, that's the one where Ank knocked him over with a counter left, I believe, followed up by a hook. We almost saw Alex get finished in that sequence. After round 2, he took it over. Now, one thing that Alex has that's really good for him, that is a positive, is that he stuffed several, if not all, the takedowns in the first fight against Ank. Now that is that's something to be confident about. That's a confidence booster, to be able to stuff all the takedowns like that. But with that being said, whether you stuff them or not, you are still going through like the physical and mental exhaustion of having to stuff those and being ready for them constantly. So unless Alex just drastically improved in the last whatever month since, the 6 or 5 months since they last fought, I don't know. Unless he's like made a complete 180 in his skill and, just has the defense of Merab's takedown defense. It's like, I don't know, dude. I think this is the end of Shama. I'm going to be honest. I think Magomed could even get the finish in this fight. Now, that being said, of course, and it's a fight. Anything could happen, and especially a puncher's chance with Alex's power. Alex could knock out Ank, and I wouldn't be surprised, quite frankly. But if I'm going by actual logic, yeah, I think Ank gets it done, and I think he could possibly get a finish around round 4, maybe. But yeah, man, Ank just put the pressure on him unlike any of his previous opponents, not even Jiri. Jiri is a threat, obviously, but he's a one-dimensional threat. He's just striking, throwing those crazy knees. He's not shooting for takedowns like Ank is. Anyway, yeah, that's what I think. Let me know what you guys think about this fight. I think it's a great card so far. Obviously barely done. Only 3 fights announced, but so far 3 great bangers of a fight. 3 great fights for UFC 320 at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Let me know who you guys pick in these fights. Let me know who you think is gonna win, and let me know what other fights should be added to this card. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.